He saved the world, but was never called a hero. He defeated the strongest monster with a single blow, yet received no reward. Why? Because he wasn't one of them. Moments later, the world collapsed. But as everything was wiped out, the system made one mistake. It left one man alive, Seong Ji-han, the last survivor. Given one final chance, he's sent back to the past, back to level 2, back to the beginning. This time, he knows everything. The betrayals, the monsters, the war to come. The martial god has returned. The story begins in New York City, USA. Everyone is staring up at the sky as something strange suddenly appears. It's a monster known as the Behemoth. Right after, everyone receives a mission. They must defeat the Behemoth before it destroys the world. Panic spreads among the people, as they believe there's no way to defeat such a creature. But one voice rises, urging everyone to stay calm, because if they fail, the world is doomed. The game they're all playing is called BattleNet, launched back in 2010. At first, it was just a typical competition between countries, but everything changed when the Space League was introduced in 2022. That's when survival battles against creatures from across the universe began. Humanity, as Earth's representative, kept losing again and again. And now, in the year 2023, only 10 countries remain on Earth. These 10 nations are fighting to prevent the planet's destruction. Back in America, the Behemoth begins attacking everything in its path. Then, someone appears in front of it. Behemoth strikes, but the attack has no effect on the mysterious figure, who counters with a single blow and takes the monster down. Just like that, the mission in America is complete. This man, who defeated the Behemoth with a single strike, is known as the Martial Saint. His real name is Seong Ji-han, and he's ranked 7th in the world. Standing atop a building, someone announces that America has once again secured a victory. That person is Baron Williams, the world's number 1, one-ranked player and the guild master of American First. Then, a woman known as the Priestess descends from the rooftop, calling out Ji-han's name. Baron lets her go, believing he can protect himself, even though his subordinates warn him that Behemoth's lingering energy is still present. The Behemoth was so powerful that just its energy was enough to knock out other players, but Ji-han stood unfazed and fought it head-on. When Sophia, the priestess and number 3 ranked player in the world, reaches the ground, she's shocked to see that Ji-han has lost one of his arms. Without hesitation, she casts regeneration magic on him. Then, the reward for defeating the Behemoth appears in front of Ji-han and Sophia. But before they can claim it, Baron steps forward and tells them to back off, saying he'll be the one to take care of the reward. His behavior sparks anger among the onlookers, who believe the reward should go to Ji-han for defeating the Behemoth. Baron then announces the reward recipients, and shockingly, Ji-han isn't on the list at all, simply because he's not a Native American. Even though Sophia protests, nothing changes. Ji-han silently walks away. To Native Americans, Ji-han is just a refugee, someone who came seeking shelter after his home country was wiped out. Ji-han had earned an SSS rank skill called Nameless Divine Arts, which is what allowed him to become the world's number 7 player. But despite his strength, he's still seen as an outsider and faces constant discrimination. What hurts Ji-han most isn't the unfair treatment, but the guilt of being the only survivor from his homeland. Ji-han then focuses on healing his arm, knowing the mission results would be announced soon. Suddenly, a system notification appears. It states that the United States and China have completed their missions. But Russia, Japan, and other countries have failed, leading to humanity's official loss. Because of this, humanity is now forced to face off against the orcs in a final, decisive battle to ensure survival. Sophia pleads with Baron, saying they need Ji-han to fight the orcs, as he's the only one who's defeated them before. But arrogantly, Baron refuses to bring Ji-han in this time. Then, humanity's representatives and the orcs are summoned into an arena. Baron looks at his team of 5 players, which includes 1 player from China. Without wasting any time, Baron unleashes his power and charges at the orcs. But shockingly, the orcs defeat him with a single strike. Seeing Baron go down so quickly throws the entire audience into a panic. One by one, the remaining 4 players are also taken out by the orcs. And just like that, Earth enters the deletion process initiated by the system. As the deletion begins, Ji-han wonders if this is truly the end of the world. But once the process is complete, an unexpected error occurs. The system detects that one human still remains, Ji-han. It turns out Ji-han survived because his skill rejected the deletion. Realizing this, the system begins to debate whether or not he should be given another chance, acknowledging the potential he holds. Eventually, the system decides to grant Ji-han one final opportunity, and in an instant, he's sent back to the very beginning of the League's launch. Ji-han suddenly wakes up. He feels dizzy and confused, wondering what just happened. He looks around and then out the window. He's back in Korea in the year 2020. That's when it hits him. He's really returned. He opens his status window and sees that he's now level 2. It's the exact point in time when he first joined the League. Realizing this fills Ji-han with a glimmer of hope. This is his chance to change the future, armed with the memories of his past life. Ji-han makes up his mind. This time, things will be different. Because he's already seen the end of the world. In the current timeline, it's still 2020, and Korea is in a stable position. That's because they have one of the world's strongest players, Yoon Sae-jin, also known as the Sword King, ranked third globally. The Sword King is Korea's pride, celebrated for his unmatched skill as a warrior. Thanks to him, Korea has consistently held a top spot in the East Asian League. In fact, they were poised to climb even higher. But then, in July 2020, the Sword King announced that he would be joining Japan. That announcement sent shockwaves throughout South Korea. Now Jihan has returned to that moment in time, and seeing the Sword King again fills him with frustration. After the Sword King left, Korea descended into chaos. A nation that once consistently ranked near the top of the East Asia League started losing repeatedly without him, and their league ranking plummeted. Day by day, Korea kept falling lower because no one could fill the void left by the Sword King. At first, BattleNet was just a game. But 2 years later, when the Space League began, it became a brutal fight for survival. If someone died in the game, they would die in real life. And on top of that, monsters began appearing in low-ranking countries to massacre civilians. Korea, being one of those low-ranking countries, was headed straight for destruction. But not everyone in Korea died. Some people managed to survive. Those survivors all said the same thing. If the Sword King had stayed, Korea would have never faced such a disaster. The Sword King wasn't just Korea's most trusted player, he was also Jihan's brother-in-law. Then Jihan smashes a framed photo hanging on the wall. He's consumed with anger and confusion. He still can't understand why his sister ever fell in love with the Sword King. He wonders, if she were still alive, would things have turned out differently? Afterward, Jihan checks his status window and sees how terrible his stats are. In his previous life, Jihan was nothing more than a fool who drank and gambled away his time. He had no idea how valuable his gift truly was. Everyone becomes a player at the age of 18, but only a select few receive a gift. Jihan was one of those few, but he got the lowest possible rank, F. He used his gift to gamble in the game, betting on who would win. Back then, he had no clue how much potential he truly had, at least not until he awakened it much later. Then Jihan starts to wonder why he's level 2 instead of level 1. Turns out, while he was drunk, he accidentally drank an experience potion, which caused him to level up. He also notices he has 100,000 achievement points, but brushes them off, thinking they're worthless. Then he opens his inventory, and is shocked to find a special card inside. It's a privilege granted to the last survivor who chooses to retry the game. This card gives Jihan the right to exchange his achievement points, which suddenly makes those points extremely valuable. Without hesitation, Jihan uses the card. It unlocks a secret shop that only accepts achievement points. Inside, there's an option to upgrade the shop itself. Jihan immediately upgrades it to level 4, since the earlier levels had nothing useful. At level 4, an item appears that takes Jihan by surprise, emergency recovery, an item that can restore broken equipment. Jihan then heads to a room where he can use the device to enter the game. There, he tries using the item to recover an old paintbrush, and it works. This isn't just any brush. It allows the user to form a connection with the martial god. When the summoning time for BattleNet arrives, Jihan quickly uses the brush on his status window. Suddenly, his stats shift into a new form: martial power. Martial power is a combination of 3 attributes: strength, agility, and vitality. Right after that, Jihan is summoned into BattleNet. He receives a limited-time mission to take first place during the tutorial. The reward, 1,000 achievement points. Jihan is thrilled. This mission didn't exist in his past life, but now that he has martial power, it should be easy. The game begins, and right after it starts, someone attacks Jihan from behind. But the attack is effortlessly blocked. Jihan then thanks the attacker for giving him his very first kill. Guilds are organizations that nurture and train players. After BattleNet took over the world, every country began developing their own elite players. With major investments from top corporations, Korea was able to build both large and small guilds, and raised many powerful players at the start of the league. Jihan is currently in Gangnam Area 1, the stage where guild talents make their debut. Before Jihan scored his first kill, a player from the Twin Star Guild had already entered the Gangnam League. The Twin Star Guild is managed directly by the Twin Star Group and is one of the top guilds filled with many gifted individuals. This particular player started out as an ordinary person, but after receiving an A-rank gift, he was recruited into Twin Star. When he sees Jihan wearing only joggers and an undershirt, he assumes Jihan is a rookie, so he immediately targets him. But his attack is easily blocked by Jihan, to the point where Jihan thinks this guy is way too overconfident in his gift. Jihan responds mockingly, asking if he really joined the Gangnam League with that kind of gift. The player warns Jihan not to underestimate him, and then unleashes his speed-based power to strike again. But Jihan dodges every attack with ease. He continues dodging, using the fight as training to adjust his body, now back at level 2. Then, when the player launches another strike, Jihan blocks it so hard that the guy drops his sword. Jihan grabs the weapon and lands a clean counterattack, scoring his first kill. When someone dies in the game, their weapon disappears with them. Now that his warm-up is over, Jihan plans to move quickly and take the top rank. To reach first place, he needs at least 5 more kills. He looks over at a group of monsters gathered nearby. Killing a monster only counts as 0.1 kill, so it takes 10 monsters to equal 1 player kill. Because of that, Most players avoid monsters and go straight for other players. Jihan thinks anyone fighting monsters is being foolish, but suddenly he receives a quest to kill 30 of them. The reward is pretty decent, so he decides to go for it. Jihan charges toward the monsters. They prepare to attack, hurling axes his way, but Jihan catches one of the axes mid-air and throws it right back. The monsters are stunned. Then Jihan closes the distance and begins slaughtering them all. As more monsters swarm him, they quickly realize, this human is way too strong. They start to wonder, is he even human? To them, Jihan looks more like a monster. Once every last one is taken down, the mission is complete. Jihan earns 500 achievement points, and his level increases. With that level up, he receives stat points to distribute. He invests them all into martial power. By doing so, he increases 3 attributes at once: strength, agility, and vitality. When martial power hits 30, Jihan's old skill, Nameless Divine Arts, is reactivated. In his past life, martial power couldn't be raised just by using stat points. It required constant training and real combat experience. But this time, he can level it up directly. Suddenly, an arrow flies toward Jihan, but he narrowly dodges it. The archer who fired it claims Jihan just got lucky. He and his partner step forward, saying they don't have much time and want to end this quickly. The true purpose of the survival map is one-on-one combat. But there's no rule against teaming up, so alliances like this are pretty common. Jihan then notices a logo on their uniforms. It's from one of Korea's top 10 guilds, the Turtle Guild. A system notification appears, announcing that the tutorial will end soon, and only 60 players remain. Jihan realizes that just avoiding fights might have been enough to survive until now, but since these two went out of their way to target him, he decides to take them on. That's when he realizes he must look like an easy target. Jihan opens the leaderboard, and so far, he has 4 kills, placing him at rank 1. Then, just as the archer starts to pull back his bow, Jihan dashes in unexpectedly and lands a clean hit, securing another kill. The archer's teammate gets furious after seeing his friend go down. Jihan tries to strike him from behind, but the attack has no effect. The guy is wearing heavy armor. Realizing this, Jihan starts hammering the same spot over and over until the armor breaks and the player is finally eliminated. That brings Jihan another kill. Meanwhile, Lee Hae-yeon, the executive manager of Twin Star Guild, breathes a sigh of relief as she watches Jihan's livestream. Thankfully, Im Ga-young wasn't summoned next to Jihan. If she had been, she might have been eliminated too, losing her shot at second place. Hae-yeon tells Ga-young that if she ever runs into Jihan, she should just avoid him. Hearing that makes Ga-young a bit annoyed, but she still agrees to follow the order. Then, Ga-young looks back at the screen, watching Jihan closely. Something about him feels familiar, like they've met before. Im Ga-young is known for having an S-rank gift. She's the pride of Twin Star Guild, a new rising star they proudly showcase to the world. She has lived up to every expectation and has never failed to take first place in any league event. But now, Jihan has taken that top spot from her. Elsewhere, members of the Turtle Guild are baffled. To them, this doesn't make any sense. Jihan is only level 2, doesn't belong to a guild, and doesn't even have proper gear. We cut back to Jihan, now standing victorious after securing first place in the tutorial. He's already reached level 6, and he immediately invests more points into martial power, raising it to 9. He also receives a title, the one who conquered the tutorial, which boosts all stats by +1 and gives plus 20% EXP, but only in Bronze League. Thanks to the bonus stats, Jihan's martial power is now 10. That means the Bronze League is going to be a breeze for him. The promotion test to Silver League becomes available at level 25, so for now, Jihan just needs to focus on getting stronger. When a player hits level 5, they're given the chance to choose a class. Choosing a class is one of the most important decisions a player can make. There are 4 basic classes: Warrior, Archer, Mage, and Support. In his previous life, Jihan picked the Warrior class, so choosing it again would make things easier. But this time, Jihan has access to the Achievement Shop, which includes the option to unlock additional class paths. So instead of going with Warrior right away, he decides to try something else first. We're then taken into the Bronze League, where the next mission is called Defense. In this mission, players must protect a crystal while surviving waves of zombie attacks. The battle continues until only 5 towers are left standing. In this league match, Ga-young already looks disgusted as she gazes at the zombies below. Soon after, 2 more people appear, because in this mission, players are grouped into teams, not playing solo. Ga-young's teammates are 1 archer and 1 mage. Then, the 4th team member shows up. It's Jihan. This time, Jihan has taken on the support class, something that immediately raises eyebrows. There's a reason Jihan chose support first. The support class has access to a stat called Divine Power. Divine Power is crucial for unlocking a unique hidden stat later on. But for most players, it's incredibly hard to raise. However, Jihan knows a secret method to increase Divine Power, using points, a method unknown to the public. Ga-young is confused about why Jihan would be a support. Even the mage mocks him, saying his gear doesn't match a support's role. The archer tries to stop the mage from running his mouth, but Jihan has already had enough. Without hesitation, Jihan picks up the mage and throws him off the tower into the horde of zombies below. Then he calmly says, "I'll be fine without him, so don't mess around." The mage is eaten alive and respawns. Now terrified, he drops to his knees in front of Jihan, apologizing and promising to take things seriously. Why? Because in this Bronze League defense mission, each player only has 3 lives. That mage, Kim Gyu-hyuk, has already died twice, both times thanks to being thrown into zombies by Jihan. If he dies a 3rd time, he'll suffer a level penalty, and any skill he previously purchased will be lost, if it no longer meets the stat requirements. Earlier, Gyu-hyuk had even tried casting magic at Jihan, but Jihan blocked every single spell with ease. Jihan had told him that magic users were actually valuable in this map, but the praise just made Gyu-hyuk arrogant. Then Gayoung finally realizes who the mage is. It's Kim Gyu-hyuk, a former mage from one of Korea's top 10 guilds. He failed the silver promotion test 4 times and was eventually kicked out. Now, he has the nerve to demand an apology from Jihan as a condition for cooperating. Hearing this, Jihan gets annoyed and throws him back into the zombies. This time, Gyu-hyuk dies for good. Meanwhile, other teams are holding off the zombies using fire magic because their mages actually know how to fight, unlike Jihan's team. The archer yells at Jihan, saying he should have just forgiven Gyu-hyuk, so they could have used his firepower. But Jihan doesn't care. Instead, he opens his status window. There, he finds a mission. Rank 1 among all 10 towers. And another one, kill 1,000 zombies solo. Jihan thinks the timing seems impossible, but the rewards are too good to pass up. So he starts strategizing. Meanwhile, Gayoung has been quietly watching him this entire time. She's stunned that Jihan, with such high stats, would choose the support class. To her, it's clear. Jihan isn't someone worth recruiting into Twin Star Guild. Then the archer yells at Jihan again, frustrated that he keeps getting ignored. He even says Jihan should just fight alone if he's going to act like that. Hearing that, Jihan asks if it's even allowed for him to fight alone. The archer responds, "Sure, do whatever you want." With that, Jihan figures he might actually be able to complete his mission solo. Then Gayoung steps forward and says she'll take the front, asking Jihan to stay back. But Jihan has no problem handling things himself. Instead, he asks Gayoung to protect the archer. Suddenly, a blood zombie appears, forcing both Gayoung and the archer to brace themselves. This wasn't an ordinary zombie, but Jihan takes it down in a single blow, his attacks infused with divine power. Without skipping a beat, he moves on, slashing through more zombies. In his mind, he wonders whether he'll really be able to finish this. At this point, Jihan has already defeated 26 zombies. Since regular physical attacks are useless against blood zombies, Jihan slowly channels his divine power into each strike, eliminating multiple targets at once. The archer watches in awe, glad he doesn't have to lift a finger. Meanwhile, Gayoung is stunned. Jihan is controlling his divine power so precisely, not wasting a single drop. To her, this level of control is simply beyond reason. On top of that, Jihan never misses. Every blow is a perfect headshot. Now, Jihan has taken out 210 zombies, and he finally meets the conditions to boost his divine power stat to 7. The method he used to raise it was something he learned from Sophia, the priestess. The trick was simple. Hold onto a relic for a long time, and divine power will increase naturally, but each relic has its own requirements, so it's not as easy as it sounds. Sophia had shared that knowledge with Jihan during the tutorial phase, warning him that relics were rare and difficult to find, and that this method would only work during the tutorial. The information was extremely secret, no one else knew, but Jihan had seen someone who kept buying up these kinds of relics. After returning to the Sword Palace penthouse, Jihan had seen a pile of drained relics, their divine power already absorbed. The person behind it all? Another saintess he knew personally, his older sister, Sung Ji-ah. Ji-ah was Korea's greatest supporter, a national heroine. Among the pile of leftover relics, Jihan finds one metal pole that still contains some divine power. He quickly grabs it and starts absorbing the power inside. Once the process is complete, the pole becomes an ordinary piece of metal. Now that his divine power has grown, the relic is completely spent. Gayoung, watching from a distance, can't believe what she's seeing. Jihan's control isn't just abnormal, it's inhuman, and his physical strength, equally insane. Then the archer calls out to Gayoung, telling her that a tower across the map has collapsed, and they should help support the other team. As he speaks, a zombie sneaks up behind him. Gayoung notices and immediately draws her sword, slicing the zombie down with ease. To her, that was nothing. Watching her, Jihan suddenly remembers Gayoung is known by the nickname Plum Blossom Sword. She was once considered a worthy successor to Sword King, but in Jihan's past life, she met a tragic end, killed by the Sword King himself. After that, Jihan thought to himself, maybe this time, he'd have to save Gayoung from the Sword King. Then Gayoung asked Jihan if she and the archer could join him in the battle. Jihan quickly pulled up the leaderboard and checked the remaining time. Seeing that there wasn't much left, he decided to let Gayoung and the archer join him. He handed over the upper part of the tower to them, and without hesitation, leapt off the platform. But he didn't just fall. He activated a skill mid-air, instantly wiping out a large group of zombies below. Thanks to that attack, their team skyrocketed to the top of the leaderboard, securing first place. That meant one of Jihan's missions was completed. However, the mission to defeat 1,000 zombies was still unfinished. So far, he had only managed to take down around 560. Then the game ended, and Jihan was teleported back to the top of the tower. At the top, the archer was ecstatic, thanking Jihan for carrying him. Meanwhile, Jihan was already thinking about challenging this tower again when he got stronger, though he wasn't sure if the same mission would show up next time. Gyeong, on the other hand, stared down at the battlefield Jihan had cleared, shocked. How could a support class player with such a low level take down that many zombies alone? She even started to wonder, could this all be some kind of bug? Then the archer logged out, and Jihan went to claim his rewards. Suddenly, Gyeong called out to him and asked for his number. She wanted to recruit him into Twin Star Guild after seeing his potential. But after asking, she realized it might have sounded misleading since she hadn't explained anything beforehand. Jihan, however, didn't seem to care. He simply replied that he didn't remember his number. He added, "I'll give it to you when we meet again." And with that, Jihan logged out of the tower. Hearing that left Gyeong flustered. She felt like she'd just been rejected. We then switched scenes to Jihan walking through the city, thinking about how he's still used to remembering American phone numbers, so he really had forgotten his Korean one. He figured that with how things were going, he'd probably draw attention from a lot of guilds, which explained why they were asking for his number now. But at this point, Jihan had no intention of joining any guild. He opened his status window to check the rewards. Turns out, he'd leveled up to level 8 and received 1,500 gold points. His divine power stat had increased as well, but he still didn't have enough gold points to buy a new relic. Jihan found it strange. Back in 2020, relics were supposed to be cheap. So, why were they so expensive this time? Later, Jihan returned home. As he entered, he noticed a pair of shoes by the door. Seeing them brought back painful memories of his deep regret, specifically the moment when he failed to protect his niece. And now, standing in front of him, was the very niece he wanted to see again. Her name was Yoon Saya, an 18-year-old girl and the daughter of Sword King and Jihan's older sister. Jihan asked if she had just returned from Jeju. Saya replied that she had come home earlier than the rest of her group. Ever since she was little, Jikan had been the one to raise her, since her mother, Jikan's sister, had always been busy with work. To Jikan, Saya was family, someone truly precious, especially after losing his entire family when he was young. Saya then said that now, it was just the two of them left in the house. Jikan asked if she had gotten a call from her father. She said yes, but apparently all he did was tell her that he'd fallen in love with a Japanese woman. He called her just to say that, because that was a condition set by the woman. Hearing that made Jihan angry, but he already knew what kind of person the Sword King was, so it didn't really surprise him anymore. To Jihan, the Sword King was nothing more than an irresponsible man, someone who abandoned both his country and his own child, just for a woman. Jihan wondered if the Sword King ever felt even a shred of guilt for leaving Saya behind to suffer on her own. Then Saya asked Jihan if he was the one who smashed the photo on the wall. Jihan apologized, saying he was just really angry at the time. But Saya said, "Why'd you break it first?" "I was planning to do that myself," she added. "You don't have to worry, I'm okay." That reminded Jihan of how Saya had always been. Even when her mother passed away, even when her father walked out on her. She still kept smiling, cheerful as ever, always worrying about Jihan more than herself. But now, Jihan wasn't going to let things stay that way. This time, he was going to protect her. He gently placed his hand on her head and said, "You don't have to force yourself to smile anymore." Saya smiled and thanked him, but then added, "You smell like sweat." We then cut to the Twin Star Guild headquarters, where Hyeon couldn't stop laughing. She'd just found out that Gyeong got rejected by Jihan. That made Gyeong visibly annoyed and a little insecure too, especially since she didn't think she was as beautiful as Hyeon. But what Gyeong didn't realize is that she's actually really popular with a lot of people. Gyeong then asked Hyeon how she planned to recruit Jihan. Hyeon looked frustrated, admitting she still wasn't sure, but she had no choice. Orders were orders, and this one came from the top. Just then, Haeyeon received a notification. Her favorite match prediction channel had gone live. Gyeong asked if Haeyeon was really still watching gambling streams, but Haeyeon insisted, "It's not gambling, it's strategic analysis." When they looked at the live stream, both of them were shocked. Jihan was on the broadcast. Right now, Haeyeon didn't care at all about gambling. She was completely focused on the live stream's title. Jihan is the Sword King's brother-in-law. In the stream, Jihan activated his powers and destroyed the sword statue on the field. The viewers exploded. Some were calling him stupid for doing that. Others were totally hyped. The stream's view count skyrocketed instantly. After destroying the statue, Jihan let out a sigh of relief, and in return, received a ton of achievement points. He then declared that he was going to share his and Sea's thoughts about the Sword King's naturalization. The platform he was streaming on was called BattleTube, a live stream system built into BattleNet. It had a global market presence and unmatched influence, and because it was directly connected to BattleNet, views actually translated into real rewards. For Jihan, holding the title Sword King's brother-in-law was an incredible advantage. It meant he could use the title to earn big prizes. But watching the stream were also fanatical Sword King supporters. the very same ones who had pushed Seiya toward her death. They were die-hard loyalists, and as time passed, their hatred and anger only continued to grow. Then that emotion finally exploded, aimed straight at the Sword King's only child, Seiya, and in the end, it led to her death. During the livestream, Jihan declared that the Sword King would never return, and immediately played an old voice recording of the Sword King calling Seiya. The entire audience fell silent. Then, Seiya appeared on the livestream and introduced herself. She explained that the Sword King had left her the Sword Palace as an inheritance, but she refused to accept it because her father had left for Japan and abandoned their family. So, instead, Seiya announced that she would donate the property to the country, hoping it could help support Korea's players. We then flash back to 30 minutes before the livestream. Seiya had been shocked when Jihan first told her he planned to donate the house to the country. She thought he must be drunk and even pinched him, not believing what she heard. She then asked why he wanted to give away everything they had. But before Jihan could answer, Seiya agreed to the idea. Jihan, surprised, asked her again if she was really sure about this. Seiya replied that Jihan wasn't the type to say something like that without a good reason, and for her, what mattered most was seeing a new side of Jihan, a side that was confident and determined. Jihan couldn't help but wonder, how had Seiya endured all this? She was truly amazing for someone her age. In truth, Jihan's goal was to shift all the hatred and criticism away from her, to redirect it toward himself, and protect her from the judgment of others, especially those targeting the Sword King's family. Then, during the livestream, Jihan decided to stir up more chaos by taunting the Sword King, saying he ran away because he didn't believe he could survive in Korea. Seiya was shocked. That part wasn't in their plan. Jihan also declared that he would destroy the Sword King when they eventually met. After the livestream ended, Seiya confronted Jihan, asking why he had gone so far. Now, things had escalated. Korea and Japan were in an uproar over what he'd done. But Jihan just brushed it off, telling her not to worry or overthink it. Seiya said something felt different about him, that he'd completely changed overnight. Jihan wasn't surprised by her words. After all, he was a regressor. He even joked, "Do I look like some uncle who drinks all day or something?" Suddenly, the doorbell rang. Both of them were caught off guard. They hadn't expected anyone so soon. Seiya began to panic, worried that someone had come looking for Jihan, but Jihan reassured her, saying it wasn't anything to worry about. Then we cut to Japan, where the Sword King was watching Jihan's livestream. His current lover, a Japanese woman, asked if it was bothering him. The Sword King didn't respond. She told him she was worried he might go through a rough time. But the Sword King simply said, "I'm no longer the Sword King. I'm Ito Ryu now." She immediately disagreed, saying, "No, you're the Sword King, Korea's #1 player. That will never change." She then added with conviction, "I love you, and you're mine." We see Jihan opening the door to his house to welcome a guest. He greets them saying, "Welcome." It turns out Jihan had been expecting this visit for a while, assuming the government would step in directly after seeing the situation. The person who arrived was Park Yoon-sik, the manager of the Battle.net department. Ever since the Sword King left, his department had stopped visiting Jihan, but Yoon-sik genuinely cared about Jihan and Seiya's situation. Jihan figured that the stage he had prepared was finally set, so he planned to grab the items he needed. The manager then informed Jihan and Seiya that the government already knew they couldn't bring the Sword King back. However, they couldn't reveal that truth to the public right away. With the Korea versus Japan match coming up soon, Jihan quickly concluded that the government wanted him to return the Sword Palace donation, because once the donation was received, it would become obvious that the Sword King wasn't coming back. The manager was surprised as Jihan seemed very different from the person he knew before. He confirmed that Jihan's guess was correct and explained that the government suggested temporarily transferring ownership of the Sword Palace until its original owner returned. Jihan thought the situation was better than he had expected, so he agreed, but he also wanted to ask the government for a favor. We then cut to Battle.net, where someone is live streaming. This person calls himself the Golden Light Streamer. His personality is so eccentric that other players can't help but be baffled by him. Golden Light Streamer is popular thanks to his flashy looks and over-the-top behavior. He's also infamous for trolling other players. He used to be a Gold League player, but he deliberately dropped to Bronze League because he didn't care about the game itself, only about having fun. His stats and gear were still at Gold rank, so he enjoyed bullying and killing weaker Bronze players. Now, he encounters Jihan in Battle.net and immediately sees it as great content. He calls out to Jihan and tries to interview him, but Jihan finds his questions annoying and distracting. Ignoring him, Jihan focuses on completing an achievement he hasn't unlocked yet. To do so, and to boost his own audience, Jihan starts his own live stream. The Golden Light Streamer tells his viewers that Jihan is ignoring him. Then he's shocked to see Jihan streaming at the same time, realizing he's essentially given Jihan free promotion. Worried that his viewers might switch over, he starts to panic. Suddenly, he receives a mission from a fanatic group called the Sword King family. The mission: kill Jihan. Seeing the reward for completing it, he's intrigued and surprised at just how much this group seems to hate Jihan. As the bounty keeps increasing, he becomes even more tempted to accept. When the match begins, he wastes no time unleashing his skills on Jihan. But to his shock, Jihan blocks the attack with his bat. Jihan immediately counters with a knife strike and scores his first kill. The streamer respawns thanks to an item called the Cross of Resurrection, which allows the user to revive once. But as soon as he comes back to life, he finds Jihan standing right behind him. Without hesitation, Jihan takes him down again, claiming his second kill. Jihan hasn't seen anyone use that item in a long time, because in the future, no one bothers with it due to its major drawbacks. Jihan then glanced toward the audience. Among the spectators, he spotted an elf watching him. Jihan had no love for the elves. They had played a major role in humanity's downfall. Deciding to focus on the players who had been eyeing him earlier, Jihan turned toward them, but the moment he looked their way, they scattered and ran. Right then, he received a mission: defeat the goblins in front of him. Without hesitation, Jihan charged at the goblins, striking with such ferocity that they too tried to flee just like the players earlier. But Jihan didn't let them escape, relentlessly beating them down. As he fought, the relic he was wielding began to react, fully activated by his use of it. After wiping out the goblins, Jihan came face to face with the goblin champion. Wasting no time, he launched an attack and cut it down with ease. His divine power increased as he absorbed the divine power stored in his relic, causing the relic's rank to drop. However, the relic still held enough energy for one more absorption. With that in mind, Jihan decided to go after other players. He set out toward the ones who had fled far from him. The scene then cuts to the streamer's location. The streamer was fuming at how Jihan treated him like a weakling. He also found Jihan's stats puzzling. They were far above what a bronze-ranked player should have. Watching Jihan's livestream again, the streamer couldn't help but be impressed by his skills. On screen, Jihan was slaughtering other players with one-sided assaults. Even when attacked himself, he easily shrugged off their blows. Before long, he completely drained the relic of its divine power. By now, Jihan had taken down 10 players, completing a hidden mission and earning 5,000 achievement points. But that wasn't enough. He wanted a far greater victory to be satisfied. Suddenly, a new mission appeared. Locate the Shadow Queen among the Colosseum spectators and provoke her. The reward shocked Jihan: 50,000 achievement points and the interest of the Shadow Queen constellation. Constellations were absolute beings tied to a star, often referred to as gods in Battle.net. Earning the interest of a constellation could lead a player to extraordinary power, something very few ever achieved. Opportunities like this usually appeared in Diamond rank, yet Jihan, still in Bronze, had one right in front of him. Determined, Jihan decided he had to complete the mission. If one constellation took an interest in him, others might follow. Still, he wondered if he could find the Shadow Queen among the elves in the crowd. The Colosseum match ended with Jihan taking first place, racking up 10 kills. His performance became the talk of the community. He was the first player to achieve this since the Sword King's departure. His stream gained 10,000 new subscribers and 4,000 live viewers. Meanwhile, Sword King's fans had been rooting for Jihan to fail, but their hopes were crushed. The wave of hate comments shifted toward the streamer instead. We returned to the streamer's perspective. After seeing the news spreading everywhere, he resigned himself to his situation. There was nothing he could do. From that moment, he decided to follow Jihan, dreaming of becoming his editor and turning Jihan into the biggest star on BattleTube. We then switch to where Saya and Jihan are. Saya is shocked after watching Jihan's match and immediately asks when he became so strong. She also says she feels sorry for his opponents, calling his performance unfair, like a completely one-sided slaughter. Jihan simply replies that the competitive world is cold and ruthless, so this is how it should be. Saya then asks why he blocked people who wanted to donate to him. Jihan says he simply forgot to adjust the settings, so they ended up being blocked automatically. Since he hadn't set it up yet, Saya suggests he should also set a minimum donation amount. Otherwise, if the donations are too cheap, it'll be hard for him to focus. Jihan decides to set it at 10,000 gold points, which is equal to $10,000. Hearing this, Saya is shocked and asks if that isn't way too expensive. Meanwhile, Jihan's mind is on the mission he received, to find the Shadow Queen among the spectators and provoke her. He has no idea how to locate her. Noticing the troubled look on his face, Saya asks if he needs help. She urges him to tell her what's going on, as she intends to assist him. Seeing her willingness to help, Jihan feels she's just like his mother. He then explains the mission to her. Upon hearing it, Saya asks what exactly the Shadow Queen is. Jihan admits he's not sure. He only knows she's somewhere among the spectators. Saya finds the mission strange, but eagerly offers to help by reviewing replays of Colosseum matches. Jihan thanks her for the offer and heads out. As he walks away, he feels a bit guilty for asking her to help, since finding the Shadow Queen is like searching for a needle in a haystack. Still, he's grateful for her willingness. Jihan then opens his status window. He's ready to choose his second class. He had already purchased an additional class slot with the achievement points he'd earned, so now he could add another. This time, he chooses Mage. The moment he gains the Mage class, he feels a new power flow from his heart, a sensation different from the divine power he already possesses. The reason he chose Mage after support is to unlock a unique stat that can only be obtained by having both classes: Force. Jihan immediately tries to manifest force in his hand. Before his regression, Jihan once overheard a drunken Baron talking a lot. At the time, Baron complained about Jihan's late citizenship change, which kept him from being friendly. He couldn't accept Jihan as an American. Baron also spoke about a stat he possessed, Force. Baron said, Force is a stat that appears when a player perfectly merges divine power and magic power. Even for him, it wasn't easy, let alone for anyone else, because only someone with 2 classes and the required 2 stats could achieve it. To Baron, Force was an invaluable SSS rank gift. He told Jihan that to merge divine power and magic power, a player needed to be at least level 10, and since only he had Force, Baron became incredibly arrogant. But Jihan couldn't argue, because it was true. Force is a devastating power that dominates space itself, and now Jihan too meets the requirements to obtain it. It was with Force that Baron became the world's #1 player, even though he was terrible at controlling and using it. That's why Jihan feels he must have it to prepare for the future. Now, Jihan focuses on channeling his divine power into his hand, while guiding his magic power from his heart to his hand, merging the 2 stats together. He concentrates intensely to avoid any power leakage. But when he finally succeeds, the power instantly bursts out, blasting him backward. Jihan realizes he can't control it. Force isn't something that can be contained by sheer strength alone. Jihan figured he needed to build up much more magic power before trying again. He had just drained a huge amount in a single attempt. He also wondered if he could really maintain Force in his hand, since it wasn't practical to keep it there forever. Realizing this, Jihan decided to try merging divine power and magic power again. This time, he focused on keeping the power inside his body. But without realizing it, he ended up trying to merge all 3 powers at once, causing the energy to explode within him. Seiya, startled by his loud scream of pain from the other room, rushed to check on him. What happened was that Jihan had accidentally used martial power along with divine power and magic power, which overloaded his body because the necessary conditions weren't met. To combine all 3 powers, one needed perfect control over each of them, each completely different, and all related stats had to be at least 100 or higher. Forcing the merge before meeting those requirements could be fatal. Panicked by Jihan's scream, Seiya hurried into his room to see what had happened. To her surprise, by the time she arrived, Jihan was no longer in pain from the internal explosion. He brushed it off, claiming it was just a headache. Seiya was puzzled. Why would someone scream so loudly from a simple headache? And how could the pain vanish so quickly? Jihan replied that it was one of the mysteries of the human body, which only made Seiya angry at his joking attitude. She then apologized for getting upset, explaining that she wasn't trying to be mad. She was just worried something serious had happened. She asked again if he was truly okay. Jihan reassured her that he was fine and apologized for making her worry. Seiya brightened up and said he didn't need to worry about her, happy that he was safe, even giving him a light tap on the chest. After that, Seiya returned to her room to continue searching for the Shadow Queen. Jihan's attempt to merge all 3 powers had completely failed due to his lack of experience and level, but it wasn't a total failure. He had successfully merged divine power and magic power, granting him Force just as he'd hoped. Checking his status window, Jihan noticed something odd. His Force stat had already reached 12. It turned out that because of his earlier attempt to merge 3 powers, martial power and Force now shared stat points. Increasing one would also raise the other. This made Jihan extremely happy. He considered it overpowered. He also became curious about what the combined power of all 3 might be like in the future. The next morning, Jihan awoke to find that his divine power had risen to 10 after sleeping with his relic. He went to check on Seiya, only to find she had stayed up all night searching for the Shadow Queen. Jihan told her she shouldn't have gone that far, but thanks to her effort, she had found something. She showed him a replay of his match that included shots of the audience, specifically 2 elves sitting on thrones. One of them was a dark elf, which led Seiya to suspect that she was the Shadow Queen. Still, she wasn't completely sure, and planned to look for more footage. We then jump back to 2 days earlier. The department manager informed Jihan and Seiya that Sword King's current lover is a woman named Ito Shizuru, who possesses an SSS rank gift called Beauty. Hearing this, both Seiya and Jihan were shocked and asked if it was possible that Sword King had fallen under her skill. The manager replied that it was indeed possible. Because of that, Jihan was warned to be cautious around her. Afterward, he tried to dig up information about both Beauty and Ito Shizuru, but he couldn't find anything at all. With no other choice, Jihan decided he'd have to heed the department manager's warning and be ready in case she made a move. The scene then shifts to the day Seiya and Jihan attend an auction for Sword King's treasures and personal collection. Seiya looked extremely nervous. It was her first time appearing in public like this. Jihan told her to be confident, reassuring her that what they were doing wasn't wrong. Upon arriving at the venue, they were greeted by the department manager, who had prepared everything for them. Jihan thanked him, though at first the manager had been confused by Jihan's request. Now, however, he understood. Jihan had planned this auction with the sole purpose of luring Japan into taking action. The auction items had been carefully selected for this goal. Among them were Sword King's battle connector and the battle data stored inside it. With these items, Japan would definitely make a move to acquire them. The manager thought Jihan was almost prophetic. able to see the future with such a calculated plan. Jihan then told him this was their last chance to influence public opinion, and he instructed the journalists to keep their eyes on the target table. Suddenly, someone called out Seiya's name. It was her aunt. She tried to stop Seiya from auctioning off Sword King's belongings, even claiming that Jihan had deceived her. But Seiya wasn't swayed, especially when they insulted Jihan right in front of her. She firmly replied that the wealth left behind by Sword King belonged to her, so it was her right, not her aunt's. Then she took Jihan with her and walked away, heading into the auction hall. Their appearance instantly caused a stir, with reporters bombarding them with questions. Unable to stand it, Jihan smashed the lenses of the reporters' cameras, telling them this was an auction, not a press conference, and that he didn't want any disturbances. The auction then began. Jihan announced the item up for bidding. Everyone there began wondering whether they should go for it. The Sword King's data was undoubtedly priceless. Then someone suddenly raised their hand to bid. The man's name was Takeda Kazuo, a recruitment manager from Japan. He immediately offered 5 billion yen and requested a private meeting. Jihan replied that it would be difficult to arrange, saying if there was anything to discuss, it should be said right now. He also pointed out, while staring directly at Takeda, that the current situation made a private meeting between a Japanese and a Korean impossible. Takeda said that as a guest at the auction, he hoped Jihan wouldn't treat him so coldly, but if Jihan kept pushing him, someone else might have to step in. That someone was his bodyguard, Shadow, who suddenly appeared in front of Jihan. The guard was a skilled player, though still nowhere near Sword King's level. He raised his sword toward Jihan, which immediately annoyed him. In irritation, Jihan struck him back. The guard, now angered, was about to retaliate, but Jihan placed a hand on his shoulder and told him to stop, reminding him that the auction was being broadcast worldwide via BattleTube. Because of that, the guard froze, unable to do anything. Takeda then quickly apologized for his bodyguard's behavior. After that, Takeda remarked that this auction was Seiya's event, as she was the heir of Sword King. He then offered her a private meeting for $50 million to discuss matters regarding Sword King, along with various other offers related to her father. But, despite the enormous amount, Seiya immediately refused. She said Takeda's request was suspicious, especially since she wasn't that curious about Sword King to begin with. So, why would she accept? Besides, she was still underage, so she would follow the guidance of her uncle, Jihan. Even though she declined the private meeting, Takeda still went ahead and bought the auction item for $50 million. Then, he pulled out a letter from Sword King addressed to Seiya and handed it to her. She accepted the letter, but didn't open it right away. Before Jihan's regression, Takeda was notorious for recruiting players from other countries with shady tactics. So much so, that the US government banned him from entering. People even called him the Japanese Calamity. Takeda then suggested they draft a contract for the ownership of the auctioned item. Jihan replied that it would be done soon, though he remained on high alert given how tense the situation was. Then suddenly, Seiya spoke into the mic, reading aloud the contents of Sword King's letter. The letter stated that Sword King had severed all ties with her as his daughter. He also said that donating Sword Palace had been a poor choice. Hearing this made tears well up in Seiya's eyes. Jihan thought to himself that his suspicion was correct. Sword King was most likely under the influence of the beauty ability. From the start, Jihan had never liked Sword King. But whenever Seiya was around, Sword King could act calm and fatherly, so Jihan never imagined he would say something so cold to her. Seiya then tore the letter in half and told Takeda to pass along a message to Sword King that she had accepted her inheritance and would also end their relationship as father and daughter. The torn paper was then completely incinerated by Jihan's combined force and fire magic. Shocking everyone, none of them expected Jihan to wield magic like a mage. Takeda, on the other hand, was filled with desire to recruit Jihan after witnessing that. Right after, guild recruiters began rushing toward Jihan to hand him their business cards. Suddenly, Seiya called out to Jihan, saying she felt dizzy, before collapsing. Jihan was stunned and rushed to her side in panic, trying to wake her up. When she came to, Seiya whispered that she was only acting. Hearing this, Jihan calmed down and immediately took her away from the venue. Watching them leave, Takeda even offered Jihan his business card, only for Jihan to angrily destroy it. But instead of being discouraged, Takeda's determination to get Jihan only grew stronger. Once they exited the auction hall, Jihan and Seiya shared a high five. Jihan commented that she had the talent to become an actress since she'd almost fooled him. Feeling smug, Seiya replied, "Have you ever seen me do anything poorly?" Just then, Jihan received a notification. Takeda had sent him a 10,000 gold point donation. Right after that, someone called out to both Jihan and Seiya. It was Hyeon from the Twin Star Guild, with Gyeong following behind her. Hyeon's reason for approaching them was to speak with Jihan directly. Jihan asked how they even got in when outsiders weren't supposed to have access. Hyeon explained that she had enough connections to get in, and she simply made use of them. She also pointed out that the Twin Star Guild was famous for its vast network, so entering a place like this wasn't difficult. Hearing her speak, Jihan felt like they had met before. Hyeon then told him she had been a long-time fan of BattleBet Match Predictor. This shocked Jihan, confirming his suspicion that she had been his friend in his previous life. Seiya, however, assumed Jihan was just stunned by how beautiful Hyeon was. After that, Jihan quoted a famous novelist, one of the greatest writers, but also a gambling addict. When the world is full of possibilities, it's hard to ignore them. He then asked Hyeon if she liked that quote. Gyeong immediately stepped forward, asking Jihan who he really was, since he somehow knew Hyeon's personal motto, something only a few people knew, that she was a gambling addict. Hearing this, Jihan became certain that Hyeon was someone he had met before. That person was the manager of American First, known by the nickname Zero. Zero was the only other South Korean besides Jihan in the guild, and she was obsessed with alcohol and gambling. However, with her gift called Nurturing, she managed to become the guildmaster of American First's reserve team. At first, this gift could only boost the EXP of a targeted player, but after the tutorial ended, it evolved, allowing her to improve other aspects of a player, such as stats and more. Hyeon then told Gyeong to stop talking, clearly embarrassed. Jihan said he remembered meeting Hyeon in one of his streams, since that was one of the most memorable messages from his viewers. Hyeon replied that she wasn't too fond of being labeled a gambling addict. Jihan laughed at that, making Seiya suspect he might be interested in Hyeon. Hyeon then added that they'd be seeing each other often from now on, and asked for Jihan's phone number. This made Seiya think that Haeyeon also liked Jihan, but in reality, Haeyeon's real goal was to recruit him into the Twin Star Guild. She was confident she wouldn't be turned down, but Jihan simply apologized, saying he didn't remember his own number. He even turned to Seiya to ask what his number was. Seiya assumed Jihan was just playing hard to get, and considered faking another fainting spell so they could leave quickly. In the end, Jihan just asked Haeyeon for her business card so he could contact her later. Once Jihan and Seiya left, Gyeong couldn't hold back her laughter. Haeyeon had just been turned down. We then cut to Jihan and Seiya in the elevator, heading home. Inside, Seiya commented that she never expected Jihan to be so unpredictable, saying the way he rejected Hyeyeon was old-fashioned. She advised him not to lie about not knowing his own phone number, because while playing hard to get was fine, that was just cruel. But the truth was, Jihan genuinely didn't know his own number, leaving Seiya shocked as she asked if he was already getting senile. We then cut to the BattleNet. Jihan logs in, exhausted after trying to calm Seiya, who somehow got it into her head that she had ruined his love life. She had completely misunderstood his relationship with Hyeyeon. But right now, what mattered more to Jihan was the fact that he never expected to run into Zero like that. Back in the day, Jihan and Zero once bet on whether Diego Mazid, a football player, would win or not. Jihan won that bet thanks to his gift. The two grew close because they had both lost their homelands. Whenever they had time off, they'd spend it drinking and gambling on football matches. Zero had already fallen deep into gambling by then and couldn't stop. Aside from both being naturalized citizens, they shared many similarities, like the guilt of surviving when their friends hadn't. Zero even once told Jihan that if he had been as strong back then as he was now, maybe Korea wouldn't have fallen and their friends wouldn't have died. But she never blamed Jihan. She blamed herself for not being able to protect what mattered to her. Back to the present, inside BattleNet, this time, Jihan brought a sword to absorb into his divine power. He also entered a defense match to complete a mission he'd left unfinished before. While playing, he was streaming live. Viewers in chat kept asking him to reveal his stats. But for Jihan, it wasn't the right time yet. He still had too many achievements to unlock. So, he set a condition. If he reached 200,000 subscribers, he'd reveal his status window. And to spice it up, he added another one. If he didn't rank number 1, he'd reveal it immediately. Then his team for this match appeared. Jihan was surprised to see another streamer among them, and a few were players he had teamed up with before, but the one that shocked him most was Diego Mazid, the top player from Argentina. What surprised Jihan even more was that Diego was an archer, because in his previous life, Diego had been a mage. Meanwhile, the mage on the team was just as surprised to see Jihan again. He was furious at Jihan for causing him to lose his skills and levels. Soon, the mage received a 50,000 gold point donation from the Sword King fan club with a mission: stop Jihan from getting first place in this match. The game began. Diego played his archer role perfectly, keeping zombies from climbing the tower. He called out to Jihan for a buff. Archers needed that extra power. Jihan had never really used buff skills before because his stats were lacking, but this time, he gave it a try and succeeded. The mage didn't expect Jihan to give him a buff too. Jihan then asked the mage if he was planning to play seriously this time. The mage replied that, yes, he would. Leaving the top area in their hands, Jihan suddenly jumped straight down into the horde below to complete his mission. Both the mage and Diego thought he was insane for doing that, but the mage let him go. He had his own plan to keep Jihan from taking first place. As soon as Jihan hit the swarm of zombies, he unleashed fire magic combined with divine power, a devastating combo that worked flawlessly. The zombies fell before him like paper dolls. He then followed up with his sword, cutting through them and sending the undead scattering everywhere. Jihan's teammates were completely stunned by his abilities. Soon, more zombies swarmed toward him, but Jihan immediately activated Absolute Domain, a skill only players with Force could use. Anyone who entered its area would have their movements restricted and controlled. Most people underestimated the power of force because it was invisible, but Jihan had grown used to wielding it. He had trained with Baron, whose force control was even more terrifying than his overall ability. After facing force again and again, Jihan had finally mastered how it worked. Right now, Jihan was an absolute being, capable of using divine power and magic power together, as well as force and martial power. With that combination, racking up 1,000 zombie kills was going to be an easy mission. He tore through the horde, slaughtering and scattering them like nothing. His teammates couldn't believe what they were seeing. Even the streamer on his team became curious about Jihan's status window. Meanwhile, the mage was trying to destroy their own team's crystal with fire magic to keep them from taking first place. He shouted Jihan's name at the top of his lungs, mocking him over and over. Hearing that, Jihan's anger flared, especially since the mage was being paid the equivalent of $55,000 to complete this sabotage mission. Jihan didn't care much when the insults were aimed at him, but the mage dared to insult Seiya too. That crossed the line. Ever since his regression, every time Jihan was with Seiya, he was reminded of the past he wished he could forget, but never could. He could still remember the day she was fatally injured during a terrorist attack by the Sword King fan club. Her face had been covered in bandages, her body cold to the touch. And back then, Jihan had been powerless to save her. This time, he swore he would never let that happen again. He would protect her. No one would be allowed to hurt Seiya, and anyone who tried would learn the consequences. After Jihan had fused 3 powers and gained force, he realized he could now use the nameless divine arts. His martial power wasn't yet at 30, so he could only mimic it for a short while. But when the 3 powers combined, the sensation was nearly identical to wielding the nameless divine arts for real. With that, Jihan advanced straight toward the mage who had insulted him, and Seiya. The streamer tried to stop the mage, but the mage attacked him with fire magic, then unleashed an even stronger blast aimed directly at the crystal. Fortunately, Diego intercepted the attack with his ball. The mage demanded to know what Diego was doing, but Diego replied that he always took games seriously, and he hated trolls. More importantly, he couldn't stand people who insulted others, especially when they dragged family into it. The mage was furious at Diego, but before he could act, Jihan was already back atop the tower, catching the mage completely off guard. Jihan used force to seal the mage's mouth shut so he couldn't speak another word. Still burning with rage, Jihan actually considered crushing the mage's head, but decided against giving him the easy way out. Instead, he would make the mage suffer without killing him, inflicting real pain on his actual body, not just a level penalty this time. Jihan gripped the mage's shoulder and unleashed force directly into him, sending waves of unbearable agony through his body. Here, the mage was in excruciating pain, to the point where he begged Jihan to stop. Even his teammates said Jihan was being too cruel for doing that to the mage. The streamer thought everyone was using a BattleNet connector, so it shouldn't hurt that much. But what Jihan was doing now was using healing magic with his left hand while attacking the mage with his right hand, something that could be considered a bug. This caused the connector to overload, forcing the player to feel 100% of the pain. The technique Jihan used on the mage was one that shattered bones and tore muscles apart, a martial arts technique that only a handful of people could perform. The method involved sending energy into the opponent's body and destroying it from the inside. The mage couldn't understand what was happening. He was already using the highest grade connector, which reduced pain by 95%. Yet it felt as if his organs were being ripped apart or stabbed by countless needles. So rather than continue suffering, he begged Jihan to just kill him. Hearing this request, Jihan granted it without hesitation. The streamer, horrified, decided to be much more careful about provoking Jihan in the future. When the mage respawned, Jihan immediately killed him again, even though the mage begged for forgiveness. He simply couldn't withstand Jihan's attacks and died instantly on his second respawn, even though Jihan had already held back his strength. Then, when the mage respawned for the 3rd time, he looked completely traumatized. He begged Jihan not to come near him and apologized again, but Jihan ignored him. To Jihan, this was the consequence he had to face for insulting Seiya. Suddenly, Seiya donated to Jihan's stream, asking him to stop because things had gone too far. She also warned that viewers would leave if Jihan kept this up, and told him to just focus on the game. Jihan didn't expect Seiya to stay so calm, and though he felt it still wasn't enough, he finally decided to stop. Meanwhile, the mage kept pleading with Jihan to end it all and just kill him again. At that point, Jihan stopped torturing him, and instead asked who had given him the courage to do such a thing. The mage confessed it was because of a mission worth 50,000 gold points, given by a fanatical supporter of the Sword King, known as the Sword King family. He apologized, saying he had lost his mind and deserved to die. Hearing this, Jihan thought something was strange. There was no way an individual would spend 50,000 gold points. It had to be backed by an organization. Jihan decided to investigate later, but for now, he told the mage to thank Seiya, since she was the one who stopped him. Then Jihan tossed the mage aside, killing him for the 3rd time, which meant he would definitely get another penalty. With that matter settled, Jihan turned back to his mission of killing 1,000 zombies. The mission should have been completed already, if not for the mage's interference. Jihan opened his status window and saw that the mission was indeed finished. He hadn't realized that the lightning step he used earlier to dash up the tower had wiped out all the zombies nearby. Because he failed to control his power properly, the leftover energy had exploded. It was only natural since the skill wasn't perfected yet, so Jihan decided he needed to train it more. After that, the streamer called out to Jihan, asking if he could join him in the fight. Jihan ignored him and went straight to Diego instead. He thanked Diego for protecting his crystal, and Diego replied that he was simply doing his duty. Jihan then said he would repay the favor later, and that there was also something he wanted to discuss with Diego privately. But before he could explain, the ground shook violently like an earthquake inside Battle.net. It turned out to be the sign of a strange monster's appearance, one that had never been seen before. It was a grotesque monster shaped like a giant hand with a mouth in its palm. Its sudden appearance shocked both Jihan and his team. Then, the hand let out a loud scream, which only annoyed Jihan further. The monster devoured nearby zombies and transformed their corpses into new creatures. These newly created monsters were the kind that should only appear in the Gold League or higher. So, why were they showing up here in the Bronze League? The monster was called a flesh golem. Jihan wondered if its appearance was triggered because he had already completed his mission of killing 1,000 zombies. Checking his status window, he found a new mission: defeat the flesh golem without the help of the crystal. Jihan didn't quite understand what "without the crystal" meant. Soon, all players received a notification that the defense tower mission had ended and a new side mission had begun. Eliminate the flesh golem. Players were baffled. Why was such a mission happening in Bronze League? Most of them didn't believe they could even fight a flesh golem. On top of that, the mission required players to also stop the monster hand, called Black Hand. To help them, the crystal granted everyone an additional buff. The streamer exclaimed that the mission was impossible. Even Gold League players struggled against a flesh golem. Jihan agreed, but pointed out that if it wasn't this difficult, the rewards wouldn't be so great. The mission rewards were a crystal fragment and 10,000 achievement points. That meant the mission was at least epic rank. With no other choice, the streamer said they would just have to fight and suggested Jihan take the crystal buff first. But Jihan simply replied that he didn't need the buff and stepped forward. Flesh golems were essentially undead, tough creatures that could only be killed if the core inside their bodies was destroyed. Jihan told the others to fall back. Then he dashed forward, charging straight at the monsters. He was about to use one of the fundamental techniques of the nameless divine arts. It was called 3 Talents Martial Devotion: Heaven, Earth, and Man, each with its own meaning. Heaven represented the sky and vertical strikes. Earth represented the ground and horizontal slashes. Man represented people and piercing thrusts. Based on this principle, there was a destructive technique: Big Mountain Press Plateau. Jihan unleashed this skill against the flesh golem. Diego and the streamer were left speechless. The name of the skill sounded impressive, but to Jihan, it was nothing more than a simple vertical slash. With that single strike, Jihan destroyed both the flesh golem and the Black Hand, completing the side mission for his team. As Jihan swung his sword, the streamer was overwhelmed with a mix of emotions: fear, despair, expectation, and excitement, all blending into one overwhelming feeling of respect. It was a respect he had never felt before. At first, he only saw Jihan as the good content for streaming, but now he realized he had to document Jihan's entire journey, a journey that would one day become legendary. And so, this moment marked the beginning of Jihan's relationship with Diego. Meanwhile, the other players failed to defeat the flesh golem, and their side mission ended in failure. Afterward, Jihan told Diego that he wanted to talk with him outside the game, about Diego's abilities. Hearing this made Diego curious about what Jihan meant. Jihan gave him just one hint: Mage. He didn't think it would be fun to explain everything right away, so he told Diego to wait until they had dinner after logging out of Battle.net. On the other hand, Diego wondered if Jihan was suggesting he should change his class to Mage. Normally, he would dismiss such an idea as nonsense, but this was Jihan, the one who had already shown extraordinary feats. So Diego decided he would discuss it with him later and promised to send Jihan a message. Overhearing their conversation, the streamer begged to be included as well, but Jihan refused, saying it would be troublesome and that this was a reward meant for Diego. The streamer kept insisting, but Jihan rejected him outright. He even offered to become Jihan's editor, but Jihan said he didn't need one. Eventually, Jihan logged out, not wanting to listen to the streamer's endless chatter anymore. Once outside the game, Jihan checked the rewards he had received. In addition to achievement points and a crystal fragment, he was informed that his next special mission would only unlock once he reached Silver League. Jihan was pleased with the 10,000 achievement points, but felt disappointed about the crystal fragment. It could only be used by supports who had advanced into St. Tess. The fragment granted a blessing called Divine Bless, one of the best buffs in existence, boosting all stats by 50%. It was a blessing considered essential in the higher leagues, but in bronze or silver, it could only be used once. Next, as the first place finisher, Jihan was rewarded with extra gold points and a 50% boost in experience. He also gained 3 levels and earned 6,000 gold points. At this point, Jihan had reached level 13, with his martial power at 17. He still needed 12 more levels to qualify for the Silver League promotion exam. Jihan couldn't believe his stats were already this abnormal, growing far faster than anyone else's. Then, the sword relic Jihan had been using suddenly reacted, granting him +1 divine power. However, his force did not increase, leading Jihan to conclude that divine power and force were not the same. Shortly after, the relic he had absorbed exploded, unable to contain the remaining power. This forced Jihan to absorb the leftover energy immediately. Otherwise, it could become dangerously unstable. Meanwhile, the scene shifted to Takeda, who hadn't expected his plan to fail. It turned out that Takeda had moved into the apartment right next to Jihan's. He was also the one who had given the mage the mission to sabotage Jisan and prevent him from taking first place. At first, Takeda believed his plan would succeed by using the mage, but unexpectedly it had failed. Because of this, Takeda decided to stop interfering in the game for a while, especially since he had already spent a considerable amount of money on a mission that ended in failure. He was frustrated. None of his plans were working out. If this kept up, Jihan might end up being taken by someone else. Takeda was someone who could clearly see Jihan's talent, so he was determined to recruit him no matter what. However, his superiors demanded solid proof before they made a move. They ordered Takeda to provide Jihan's status window as evidence. Takeda was confident he could deliver such proof. With little time left, Takeda resolved to get serious with his plans to recruit Jihan and mold him into another Sword King, just like the one who had once fallen under the charm of a Japanese woman's skill, beauty. After that, the scene shifts back to Jihan. After absorbing the power from the relic that had just exploded, his force stat finally increased. It turned out that to raise force by just 1 point, Jihan needed to gain 3 points in divine power. Thanks to this increase, his martial power also rose to 18. However, since his force stat had now exceeded 17, Jihan realized he could only absorb divine power from relics ranked A or higher from now on, which he thought was a bit excessive. Just then, Seiya came into Jihan's room. She told him that Takeda had transferred 50 million, then asked Jihan what had happened. Jihan casually replied that his weapon had exploded earlier, so she didn't need to worry. Still unconvinced, Seiya pulled him along and insisted he clean himself up so she could treat his injuries. Once she finished, the two of them went out to eat together. At the restaurant, Seiya asked if Jihan was really okay. She asked because she had just received a huge deposit, yet the meal they were eating was so cheap. Hearing this, Jihan asked if she didn't like the food. Seiya explained that it wasn't that she disliked it, but didn't Jihan prefer steak over what they were eating now? Back then, he used to eat steak all the time. But this time, Jihan admitted he missed the food in front of him, so he chose it over steak. Seiya sighed, saying he should have ordered something more expensive since she was paying. Jihan simply told her not to worry, since they could still eat 3 meals a day. Then Seiya revealed that she planned to return to the academy. After all, she was the student council president and couldn't just sit around. This surprised Jihan. On top of that, the day of Seiya's gift awakening was drawing near, her 18th birthday, August 22nd. In his previous life, Seiya had desperately looked forward to that day, hoping her gift would change her life for the better. But instead, she received a rank F gift, which shattered her spirit. Jihan knew that if he told her the truth now, she'd only be disappointed, so he planned to slowly lower her expectations instead. He then asked if she was going to the academy tomorrow. Seiya replied, yes, tomorrow was Monday. So Jihan insisted he would take her there. Seiya was surprised and protested, saying she wasn't a child, so he didn't need to worry. But Jihan remained firm, saying the situation wasn't safe, which made Seiya pout. Still, deep down, she was happy he was being protective. Seeing her expression, Jihan couldn't help but laugh. The next morning, when they arrived at the parking lot, both Jihan and Seiya were shocked. There wasn't a single luxury car in sight. Seiya explained that it seemed all the cars had been sold. That's when Jihan realized why he hadn't seen a single car key. Seiya decided they should just take the bus, but Jihan noticed there was still one car left. It was her mother's old car, unused for years and in terrible condition. But since it could still open and start, Jihan decided to use it to take Seiya to the academy. At first she refused, worried something bad might happen, but in the end, she had no choice but to go along with him. Sure enough, the car caused a problem. It wasn't fit to be parked at the academy. Someone there complained about the car, and Jihan ended up arguing with them. The incident was caught on camera by onlookers and quickly uploaded online. Elsewhere, Haeyeon saw the video and decided to head to the academy as well. Gyeong asked why so suddenly. It turned out Haeyeon intended to make Jihan obsessed with her because he had rejected her before. We returned to Jihan's side, where the situation was heating up. One man, refusing to back down, suddenly threw a punch at Jihan. Seeing Jihan about to be hit, Seiya and the bystanders gasped, only to be shocked when the strike stopped right in front of Jihan's face. Jihan quickly silenced the man and floored him with his force. Just then, someone appeared and called out to Seiya. It was her friend, Kim Hisu. As it turned out, the man who attacked Jihan was Hisu's bodyguard. Hisu then asked why Seiya was riding in such a shabby car. What had happened to all her other cars? Seiya replied that her father had sold them all. Hearing this, Hisu told her she should have contacted him. He couldn't just allow Seiya to live like that. Watching the exchange between Hisu and Seiya, Jihan wondered if Seiya had truly been close with someone like Hisu in his previous life. That thought made Jahan feel that something wasn't quite right. A few minutes later, Hyeon and Gyeong arrived at the academy's parking lot, but they were too late. Jihan was already gone. Someone there told them he had just left. Hyeon grew anxious, unsure how to recruit Jihan before another guild snatched him away. She nervously bit her nails. Seeing this, Gyeong reminded her that nothing would be solved if she just kept biting her nails. Hyeon steadied herself, and when Gyeong asked what the plan was now, Hyeon said she had no choice but to track Jihan in real time. At that moment, Jihan was already inside BattleNet, live streaming. He was completely unstoppable, mercilessly mowing down other players. He even used the incomplete nameless divine arts skill. When the match ended, Jihan had secured first place once again. That made it his 5th consecutive victory, which boosted his EXP and gold points by 200%. Thanks to this, Jihan leveled up twice, reaching level 15. This unlocked a new game mode, Dungeons. Unlike regular matches where players only had to fight, dungeons were filled with traps and puzzles to solve. On top of that, there were strict limits on what solo players could accomplish. Even BattleNet itself recommended forming a party. The problem was, with so many people targeting Jihan, there would surely be players trying to sabotage his party. This made Jihan consider whether he should temporarily join a guild, but he felt it wasn't a good idea. It might be difficult to leave once he joined. For now, he decided to endure a little longer, since he would soon reach silver, and once he did, Jihan planned to create his own guild. The scene then shifted to Jihan and Saya cooking together. After finishing, they sat down at the table and ate. Tasting the food, Saya was surprised. She never knew Jihan could cook so well. He explained that he had learned to cook during his previous life in America. Jihan then asked if she wanted to ride with her friend's car again to the academy, but Saya immediately refused. Her friend had made her uncomfortable, constantly prying into her personal life on the ride back last time. It had been so irritating that she'd rather take her mother's old car than go with her friend again. Hearing this, Jihan smiled, agreeing with her choice. After that, the scene shifted to the academy. In front of the academy, countless recruiters were waiting for Jihan's arrival, eager to recruit him into their guilds. When Jihan and Saya arrived at the parking lot, they spotted Hyeon and Gyeong. It turned out they were also waiting for Jihan. Hyeon immediately stepped forward and asked if she could have a moment of his time. The two of them then went to a cafe to talk. Other recruiters who saw this were annoyed, frustrated that Hyeon had gotten to Jihan before them. The conversation began with Jihan apologizing for forgetting to contact Hyeon, explaining that he had been busy. But Hyeon didn't waste any time. She said this was the first time she had ever chased after someone, and then boldly offered Jihan a platinum contract. This shocked the other recruiters, since they could only offer him gold contracts at best. Even Jihan himself was surprised at how far Hyeon was willing to go. She explained that she could make such an offer because only she had the authority to issue a platinum contract. Seeing her determination, Gyeong was left speechless, and the other recruiters could only walk away in defeat. Then Jihan caught the scent of Hyeon's perfume. It was the same fragrance used by Zero in his previous life. Meanwhile, Hyeon wondered how Jihan could remain so calm in this situation. His composure made her feel as though her pride was being trampled. She couldn't let things continue that way, so she took the initiative and asked for his contact information. But instead of agreeing, Jihan suggested a bet. He told her he had just reached level 15, and his next match would be a dungeon game. Hyeon was shocked. It had taken him only 1 month to reach that level, which was unbelievably fast. She asked why he suddenly wanted to make a bet and what the terms were. Jihan replied that he would enter the dungeon right away. If he failed to take first place, he would willingly join the Twin Star Guild and give her his number. Hyeon pointed out that many people would be targeting him, especially since he'd be entering without a guild party. But Jihan said that was perfect for a bet. After all, if it were easy, it wouldn't be any fun. Hyeon then asked what she would have to risk if Jihan did take first place. Jihan told her that if he won, she would have to show him her status window. He wanted to see for himself whether Hyeon really possessed the nurturing gift, just like in his previous life. At present, the nurturing gift was considered useless by most people, so when Hyeon heard the condition, she felt embarrassed. Still, she accepted the wager and told Jihan not to regret it later. With that, Jihan immediately logged into BattleNet and began streaming. The dungeon he entered was called the Tomb of the Conqueror. The Tomb of the Conqueror was the underground resting place of a legendary conqueror. It was infamous for its endless waves of monsters, with almost no traps or puzzles inside. Even so, it was considered one of the most difficult dungeons. To clear it, every member of the party had to survive until the end, making the party composition extremely important. Jihan's party had already entered the dungeon, and he thought this group didn't seem too bad. His party members, on the other hand, were astonished to find themselves teamed up with Jihan. After shaking hands, they discussed who would lead the party. Jihan immediately declared that there was no need to discuss it. He would be the leader. Without a single complaint, the party members agreed and began following him. Jihan felt relieved this time. No trolls. He had been a little worried because of the dungeon's strict conditions for completion. The party then began exploring the dungeon. Right at the start, they were blocked by enemies. One of Jihan's party members suggested that he use magic to defeat them, but Jihan simply replied that it wasn't necessary. They just needed to follow his lead. The enemies charged, and Jihan took them down effortlessly with his bare hands. When it was over, Jihan turned to his teammates and asked why they were just standing there stunned. He had already told them to follow him. This dungeon had 10 corridors, each assigned to a team, all of which connected to the 7th floor, the final stage. Jihan's team had been placed in the 8th corridor, putting them at the front lines. Thanks to his overwhelming strength, they had already reached the 3rd floor. His teammates were astonished that Jihan could defeat monsters with such high endurance so easily. Even Jihan himself felt the enemies were far too weak for him. Then suddenly, Takeda's donation appeared on Jihan's stream. Jihan frowned, wondering what Takeda was planning this time, before promptly blocking him, annoyed by his chatter. Before long, Jihan's team cleared the 3rd floor. The members thanked him for carrying them, but Jihan told them there was no need. As long as they didn't get in the way, that was already enough help. They soon reached the 4th floor. Unlike before, there were no monsters, only traps scattered everywhere. Jihan asked his team if they minded him moving ahead faster. They assured him they didn't, so Jihan went forward to handle the traps, leaving the rear in his teammates' hands. But in reality, the entire team was plotting something. They were secretly hoping Jihan would rush ahead because they had received a mission from Takeda: commit suicide in the dungeon. The reward was an incredible 1 million gold points. Originally, Takeda hadn't intended to use the start tag trick for a second time, but since he had nothing better to spend his money on, he decided to go through with it, and he was curious to see how Jihan would react this time. If Jihan ran ahead without realizing what was happening, he would fail, unless someone warned him in advance. Jihan sprinted forward, dodging traps as they activated. One of his teammates considered using magic to assist him, but Jihan didn't need it. He had his force, which allowed him to manipulate space itself. Then, one of the players who had stayed behind hurriedly told Jihan that the others were about to kill themselves. Realizing this, Jihan immediately activated Thunderstep, intercepting them before they could go through with it. Using his force, he restrained them, preventing their suicides. The player who had warned him then approached Jihan, shocked that he had managed to stop them. The would-be betrayers were furious, regretting not killing themselves earlier. They even began bickering among themselves, since they had all received the same mission. Jihan checked his status window and confirmed the mission details for himself. Meanwhile, one player apologized, admitting that he had almost ended the game. But Jihan already knew that he too had received the same mission, and promptly stopped him from attempting suicide as well. The man was irritated that Jihan had figured it out, even though he hadn't acted suspiciously. The truth was Jihan knew because of a donor named Golden Light. A loyal fan, Golden Light had been watching Jihan's stream in real time, while also watching the streams of Jihan's teammates. He had witnessed the exact moment Takeda sent them donations and gave them their mission. So Golden Light quickly donated to Jihan, warning him about it before it was too late. After that, Jihan found Takeda's actions suspicious. Even if Takeda held a grudge against him, spending 1 million won on a single mission was far too excessive, even when lives were on the line. It simply wasn't worth it. So, Jihan told his stream that it had to be the work of a major guild, or perhaps the influence of the Sword King himself. His words immediately stirred up the viewers, who began buzzing and speculating about who was behind it. Because of this, Jihan decided to change the subscriber goal he had promised for revealing his status window. What was originally 200,000 subscribers was now set to 1 million. Jihan was actually quite pleased by this turn of events. He had been worried he would soon hit 200,000 subscribers too quickly, but now he could raise the bar thanks to the situation. Then, from his inventory, Jihan pulled out a rope and tied up his teammates to stop them from attempting suicide again. With that handled, he pressed on. Before long, Jihan reached the 6th floor. 10 minutes earlier, he had been dragging his teammates along with his force. During that time, they threatened him, demanding he let them go. If he refused, they warned, he'd have to deal with their guilds. In response, Jihan struck their acupoints to keep them quiet. This was something only an advanced warrior class, known as a martial artist, should have been capable of. One of them even tried to provoke Jihan by bringing up Seiya's name, but Jihan had anticipated the attempt and immediately silenced him with his force. He then continued dragging them down to the next floor, healing them whenever their pain became too much. Back on the 6th floor, Jihan entered a space so dark he could hardly see. Still, he could clearly sense the many enemies in front of him. More monsters began appearing behind him as well. The horde charged, but this time Jihan drew his sword and cut them down with ease. He didn't struggle at all. Then, something strange happened. The monsters' eyes began to glow, and they chanted, "The Emperor is eternal." At that moment, Jihan received a new mission: defeat all the enemies for 1,000 achievement points. He was thrilled. He hadn't gotten such a mission in a long time. To ensure he could stay focused, he cast shields on his teammates. Then, Jihan began his massacre, unleashing a powerful skill: Force Absolute Territory. He marveled at just how overpowered it was. Within its range, the movements of every opponent slowed dramatically. With just the motion of his hand, he could crush anything inside that territory. Absolute Territory was a space where its user held complete dominion. In his previous life, Baron had only used it to reinforce mana, which Jihan now realized was a complete waste of its true potential. Determined to finish things quickly, Jihan launched a devastating attack, wiping out all the enemies at once. The mission was cleared instantly. After that, Jihan entered the 7th floor. the final floor where the emperor resided. The requirement to clear this floor was that all players had to worship the emperor. So, Jihan untied the ropes binding his teammates. However, he didn't set them free completely. He still controlled them with his force, making sure they wouldn't try anything reckless. With his force stat now at 18, his range was much greater than before. The emperor then commanded Jihan's party to begin their worship. Jihan arranged his team into formation, and, under his control, they all bowed before the emperor together. Once the ritual was complete, Jihan assumed the dungeon would be cleared, and indeed, as the emperor acknowledged the offering, the 7th floor was marked as complete, and a portal to exit appeared. Meanwhile, Jihan's teammates felt relieved, grateful that he was even willing to share the dungeon rewards with them. But at that moment, Jihan suddenly received a new mission: show true respect to the emperor. Reward: 5,000 achievement points and the emperor's arrow. The reward was tempting, and Jihan couldn't let it go. He decided to complete the mission. Jihan grabbed one of his teammates and dragged him forward. With a cold tone, he declared that he would now show the emperor what true respect looked like. That respect was throwing his teammate straight at the emperor. The unfortunate player was instantly devoured by the emperor's horse. Shocked, the emperor asked Jihan what he meant by this. Jihan smirked and explained what he meant was that he would take all of the emperor's treasures, including the arrow in the emperor's hand. The true condition for clearing the quest was to recognize the value of the emperor's arrow and to show respect by claiming it as his own spoils. Hearing this, the emperor burst into booming laughter. Amused and impressed, he admitted that Jihan was remarkable. He declared that Jihan had caught his interest and recognized him as an extraordinary player. As such, the emperor decided to bestow his treasure upon Jihan. Jihan gladly accepted, but in the next moment, the emperor raised his bow and loosed the arrow straight at Jihan, forcing him to withstand the strike head-on. This video ends here, but the story isn't over yet. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you won't miss the next part.